Welcome to Grifter or Gifted. Today we're diving into a case I think you'll find fascinating. The story of Eric C. Conn,
Eric C. Conn.
a lawyer who made a name for himself in the world of Social Security disability law. He was known as Mr. Social Security,
Mr. Social Security.
plastered on billboards and TV ads promising to help people get those benefits.
Right.
But was he a true advocate for the vulnerable?
Mm.
Or was all this a big con?
Yeah, that's what we're going to try to unpack today.
Yeah. Was he a grifter or was he gifted? That's what we're here to figure out.
What I find so interesting about Conn is that he really embodies this question we always ask on the show.
Right.
This line between visionary leader and master manipulator.
Right.
He built this huge practice, became one of the most successful disability lawyers in the whole country. But his methods and his motives have always been sort of shrouded in this cloud of suspicion.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning and see if we can find any early warning signs.
Yeah. Take us back.
Okay, so
Set the stage for us.
imagine the 1990s, long before social media influencers.
Right.
Conn bursts onto the scene.
Not with an Instagram post.
No, not with a slick Instagram post.
Yeah.
But with billboards, TV and radio ads. Everywhere you look, you see Eric C. Conn, Mr. Social Security.
Your Social Security.
He is promising to help people navigate this world of disability claims. It's a confusing world.
It is. It is a bureaucracy paperwork.
Oh, absolutely. And people who need those benefits are often
Yes.
in a very tough spot in their lives already.
Absolutely vulnerable.
The vulnerable, exactly. So he's tapping into something very real.
A real need.
A real need.
A real need. And he's not afraid to be bold about it. This guy.
I mean, he was a marketing genius.
Oh, he was a marketing genius. No question about it.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And that savvy that he had really helped him quickly become super prominent.
Yeah.
He understood that there was a need, especially in these poorer parts of the country.
Like Appalachia?
Like Appalachia, exactly.
Yeah.
Where disability benefits can be
A lifeline.
a lifeline for people.
Yeah.
You know? So he had this folksy charm, this aggressive marketing style, and it really resonated with people who felt like they'd been ignored and forgotten.
Yeah, they felt like he was on their side.
Absolutely. He was a champion of the underdog, or at least that's how he
presented himself.
presented himself, is how he branded himself.
Right. But as his practice grew, so did the whispers about his methods.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there were allegations of, shady stuff going on. Falsified medical documents, cozy relationships with judges.
Right.
What's that saying? If it seems too good to be true,
It probably is.
it probably is.
And that's where the story starts to take this darker turn.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about a few little slip-ups here and there.
Right.
This is a massive, well-organized scheme.
Wow.
Conn was bribing doctors to create these fake medical reports.
Wow.
He even had a judge on his payroll.
A judge.
A judge.
Who got $609,000 to basically rubber stamp any claim that Conn put in front of him.
$609,000.
$609,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about gaming the system.
Yeah.
A system designed to help those in need.
Yeah.
And he figured out how to exploit it.
And he exploited it for his own personal profit. We're talking about over $550 million in benefits.
$550 million.
$550 million in benefits that were paid out fraudulently.
Wow, this wasn't just bending the rules a little.
Yeah.
This was a full-blown criminal enterprise.
This was organized crime, white-collar crime.
I mean, and all of those people who may have legitimately needed those benefits who got caught up in this scheme.
Exactly. That's what's so important to remember here. Thousands of his clients, they were legitimate cases.
Yeah.
People who genuinely needed help. They thought Conn was on their side,
Right.
but he was setting them up for a huge fall.
A huge fall. And that fall came when the Wall Street Journal
The Wall Street Journal, yeah.
published an expose.
An expose, and then a Senate committee launched this big investigation.
They blew the lid off this whole thing.
Yeah.
It all just came crashing down.
It all came crashing down, and those investigations were so thorough, they didn't just expose the details of Conn's scheme, but they showed just how vulnerable the Social Security system was.
Yeah.
That this kind of fraud could even happen on this scale.
So it wasn't just about one charismatic lawyer anymore.
Right.
It was about a system that allowed this to happen.
Exactly, and that's what we'll talk about after the break.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
So Conn's facing a mountain of evidence, right?
Right.
He pleads guilty to theft and gratuity charges.
Okay.
But the story doesn't end there.
Of course not. It's Eric C. Conn we're talking about.
Exactly. While he's awaiting sentencing,
Uh-huh.
he pulls off this incredible escape.
He cuts off his ankle monitor.
Cuts off his ankle monitor, disappears.
Gone. Vanished. A fugitive. I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie.
It really does. It's this dramatic twist in the story. But I think it shows just how desperate he was and maybe how arrogant he was. He was about to face the music not just for the financial fraud, but for betraying all those people.
All those people who trusted him.
Who trusted him. He had a lot to answer for.
And it wasn't just about Conn anymore, right?
Yeah.
His case shined a light on these huge problems in the Social Security system.
Right, a system that millions of Americans rely on.
Absolutely. So Conn's case became a national scandal.
It did.
And it forced everyone to take a hard look at how things were being run.
Exactly. They had to start asking some tough questions about oversight and accountability.
About how to prevent this from happening again.
Exactly. And you know what? Conn's scheme actually led to some positive changes.
Really?
Yeah. They had to reform the system to try and make it harder to exploit. For example, they changed the treating physician rule.
Okay, what was that?
Well, before Conn's case, they used to give a lot of weight to what a claimant's own doctor said.
Okay.
But after the scandal, they realized they needed a more comprehensive assessment of the medical evidence.
So they couldn't just rely on one doctor's opinion.
Right. They needed to get a second opinion, maybe even a third.
So Conn trying to cheat the system actually ended up making it stronger.
In a way, yes. It's ironic, isn't it?
It is kind of a strange twist.
It is. It was a wake-up call for everyone. They had to adapt. They had to find ways to prevent future fraud.
And it showed how important those administrative law judges are.
Yes.
In making sure the right decisions are being made about disability benefits.
Absolutely. Remember, Conn had that judge, David Daugherty, on his payroll.
Right. He was the one approving all those bogus claims.
Thousands of them, just signing them off without a second thought. And all for those bribes.
It's just mind-boggling that a judge would be involved in something like this.
It really is. It undermines our whole legal system when something like that happens.
So after this scandal, there were a lot of calls for more transparency and accountability within the Social Security Administration.
Absolutely. And they started doing more to train and monitor those judges and to make it easier to report and investigate any suspicious activity. So they were trying to make sure something like this couldn't happen again.
Okay, so we've got Conn on the run, a system in chaos, and all these victims left to deal with the consequences. What happened to those folks who were caught up in Conn's scheme?
Well, thousands of Conn's former clients had to go through these reevaluations of their disability claims.
Oh.
And it was a nightmare for them. It was stressful. It was confusing. It took forever.
And these were people who were already struggling.
Exactly. They needed those benefits to survive.
Yeah.
And now suddenly they were being told they might lose them.
So their lives were turned upside down.
Completely. And the worst part is many of these people were genuinely disabled.
They really needed the help.
They did. They were victims twice over, first by Conn and then by the system itself.
Yeah. Trying to weed out the fraud, but hurting the very people it was meant to help.
Exactly. It's a real tragedy.
So what happened to them? Did anyone try to help?
Thankfully, yes. Some organizations stepped up to try and right the wrongs.
Okay, good.
Like Paul Red.
Paul Red.
Paul Red. And there were some lawyers like Ned Pillersdorf who fought really hard for Conn's victims.
Okay, what did they do?
They pushed for things like waived overpayments.
Okay.
Modified redetermination procedures, and just basic fairness for those people who'd been wrongly denied or accused of fraud.
So they were trying to help them get the benefits they deserved.
Exactly. They were trying to clean up the mess that Conn had left behind.
Well, good for them for stepping up like that.
It's inspiring to see people like that fighting for what's right.
It is. So Conn was on the run.
Right.
But he couldn't hide forever.
He couldn't. After 6 months.
6 months.
6 months they caught him.
Where?
In Honduras.
Honduras. Wow.
They extradited him back to the U.S.
Okay.
And remember that 12-year sentence he was facing? Yeah.
Well, because he ran away.
Uh-huh.
That got bumped up to 27 years.
27 years in prison.
27 years.
Wow, that's a long time to think about what you've done.
It is. And it shows that you can't outrun justice forever.
No, you can't. Conn's story is a powerful reminder that actions have consequences, and even the most elaborate schemes eventually fall apart. But let's talk about the ethical side of this. We're talking about a lawyer who built his career on helping people, but then turned around and betrayed them in the worst possible way. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a complicated question.
It is.
Conn might have started out with good intentions, but somewhere along the line something changed.
Yeah.
Maybe it was greed, maybe it was ambition, but he lost his way. And the damage he caused is immeasurable, not just to his clients, but to the whole idea of legal representation.
Right. It makes people question whether they can trust their own lawyers.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's a problem for everyone. It's a betrayal of that fundamental trust that's supposed to exist between a lawyer and their client. It's a huge responsibility, and Conn abused it.
He did.
So where does that leave us? We've got Conn behind bars, but his legacy lives on. What are the biggest takeaways from this case? What lessons should we learn from all of this?
Well, it's a complicated question. Conn might have started out with good intentions, but somewhere along the line, something changed. Maybe it was greed, maybe it was ambition, but he lost his way. And the damage he caused is immeasurable, not just to his clients, but to the whole idea of legal representation.
Right. It makes people question whether they can trust their own lawyers.
Exactly. And that's a problem for everyone. It's a betrayal of that fundamental trust that's supposed to exist between a lawyer and their client.
It's a huge responsibility, and Conn abused it.
He did.
So where does that leave us? We've got Conn behind bars, but his legacy lives on. What are the biggest takeaways from this case? What lessons should we learn from all of this?
Well, I think one of the most concerning aspects of this whole thing is how it's damaged the public's perception of disability benefits.
Yeah.
Conn's actions have fueled this cynicism, this suspicion, and it casts a shadow over everyone who legitimately needs and relies on these programs.
It's like a few bad apples spoil the whole bunch.
Exactly.
And in this case, the bunch includes not just the people seeking benefits,
Right.
but also the people who work within the Social Security Administration, the ones who are trying to do the right thing.
The ones who are committed to making sure the system works the way it's supposed to.
Exactly. So Conn's actions hurt everyone,
They did.
and it shows just how important it is to have strong oversight and accountability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't just assume that people will always do the right thing.
Right.
We need checks and balances. We need safeguards to prevent abuse and to deter those who might be tempted to exploit the system.
And we've talked about the reforms, the legal batters that came out of Conn's scandal,
Yeah.
but we can't forget about the human cost.
Oh, absolutely.
Thousands of his former clients are still struggling with the consequences.
AR.
They faced financial hardship, legal battles to clear their names,
Right.
and the emotional toll of having their lives turned upside down.
It's a lot to deal with.
It is, and their stories remind us that fraud isn't just about numbers.
No.
It's about real people, real lives.
People whose lives were upended, whose trust was broken.
And it makes you wonder, are we doing enough as citizens to hold those in power accountable? Are we paying attention to what's happening in our communities?
Those are great questions, and I think the Conn case serves as a warning to all of us.
A wake-up call.
A wake-up call, exactly. We need to be vigilant, we need to think critically, and we need to be willing to speak out against injustice, especially when it comes to those who are most vulnerable.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Eric C. Conn, the question remains, grifter or Gissid?
Right.
He may have started out wanting to help people, but it seems like greed and ambition ultimately took over.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
His story is a cautionary tale about the fragility of trust, the allure of power, and the importance of staying vigilant in a world where things aren't always as they appear.
Well said. I think Conn's case, while seemingly straightforward, really forces us to examine those gray areas where ambition and deception can become intertwined.
It makes you think.
It does, and hopefully it encourages all of us to be more discerning, more engaged, and more willing to hold both individuals and systems accountable for their actions.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the complex and troubling world of Eric C. Conn. We hope this exploration has sparked some important conversations about the choices we make, the systems we rely on, and the responsibility we all share in protecting the vulnerable and upholding justice in our society.